6 days that shook an empire, a proclamation that echoed through generations. The Easter Rising of 1916 wasn't just a rebellion, it was the spark that ignited a century of change for Ireland. But what if those 6 days in April had never happened? What if the names Pearse, Connolly and Plunkett were lost to history instead of etched into the soul of a nation? Join us as we unravel the threads of fate that led to the Rising and explore the ripples that still shape Ireland today. As the clock ticked towards 1916, Dublin simmered with a tension that threatened to boil over at any moment. The British government's repeated delays in implementing Home Rule had ignited a powder keg of frustration among Irish nationalists. The once promising peaceful approach championed by the Irish Parliamentary Party now faced growing scepticism from a populace weary of broken promises and political manoeuvring. In this charged atmosphere, militant groups began to rise like phoenixes from the ashes of disappointment. The Irish Republican Brotherhood, Irish Volunteers, and Irish Citizen Army emerged as powerful forces, each driven by a shared vision of Irish independence. These organizations became the crucibles in which the fires of revolution were stoked, attracting passionate patriots eager to take more direct action against British rule. From the shadows of secrecy emerged key figures who would shape the course of Irish history. Patrick Pearse, a poet and educator with a fierce love for Irish culture, found common cause with James Connolly, a dedicated socialist and trade union leader. Thomas Clarke, a veteran Republican who had already endured years of imprisonment for his beliefs, joined their ranks. Together, these men and their compatriots began to weave a complex web of revolutionary planning, their clandestine meetings laying the groundwork for what would become a defining moment in Ireland's struggle for freedom. As if the situation needed any more complexity, an audacious plot to secure German arms added an element of international intrigue to the brewing rebellion. The rebels, recognizing their need for weaponry, sought assistance from Britain's wartime enemy. This daring gambit highlighted the desperation and determination of the revolutionary movement, willing to risk everything for a chance at victory. Yet even as plans progressed, discord threatened to unravel the rebels' carefully laid schemes. Owen MacNeill, a respected figure within the Irish Volunteers, issued a countermanding order on the eve of the uprising. His decision, born from concerns over the feasibility of the rebellion, sent shockwaves through the revolutionary ranks. Confusion reigned as conflicting messages circulated, leaving many unsure of whether to proceed or stand down. Despite these setbacks, a core group of rebels remained resolute in their commitment to action. They understood that turning back now would mean surrendering their dreams of an independent Ireland. With steely determination, they pressed forward, knowing that the die had been cast and there was no going back. As Easter Monday dawned, an electric anticipation filled the air. Rebels gathered in small groups, their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. They knew that in a matter of hours, they would be seizing key locations throughout Dublin, transforming the city into a battleground for Irish freedom. The General Post Office, destined to become the headquarters and symbol of the rebellion, stood silent and unaware of its impending role in history. Meanwhile, British forces in Dublin began to stir, unaware of the storm about to break upon them. As the rebels made their final preparations, tension coiled tighter with each passing moment. The stage was set for a confrontation that would echo through the ages, forever changing the course of Irish history. The storm that had been brewing in Dublin's heart finally unleashed its fury on Easter Monday, 1916. As the city awoke to the sound of gunfire and the sight of armed rebels taking strategic positions, few could have imagined the transformation that was about to unfold. The next 6 days would not only rewrite Ireland's destiny, but challenge the might of the British Empire in ways that would echo through generations. The General Post Office, a symbol of British authority in the heart of Dublin, became the epicenter of the rebellion. Rebels stormed the building, their footsteps echoing through its hallways as they claimed it as their headquarters. It was here, amidst the chaos of the uprising's first hours, that Patrick Pearse stepped forward to read the Proclamation of the Irish Republic. His words, bold and defiant, declared Ireland's right to freedom and sovereignty, igniting a spark that would burn long after the physical battle had ended. As the rebels secured their positions, the city became a chessboard of strategic points. Mount Street Bridge, the Four Courts, and the South Dublin Union transformed into battlegrounds where the fate of a nation hung in the balance. Each location told a story of courage and sacrifice as outnumbered rebels faced the full might of the British military machine. The British response was swift and overwhelming. What began as a force of 400 troops in Dublin swelled to a staggering 20,000 within days. Soldiers poured in from across Ireland and Britain, turning the streets of Dublin into a theatre of war. The escalation of force was a testament to the seriousness with which the British viewed this challenge to their authority. As the week progressed, the face of Dublin changed dramatically. The British military, determined to crush the rebellion, employed heavy artillery that transformed the city's skyline into an inferno. Historic buildings that had stood for centuries were reduced to smoldering ruins. The air filled with smoke and the cries of the wounded as civilians found themselves caught in the crossfire of a conflict that raged through their neighborhoods. The intensity of the fighting reached its peak around key strongholds. The rebels, though vastly outnumbered, fought with a determination that surprised their opponents. Each street became a potential ambush site, each building a fortress to be defended to the last. The courage displayed by both sides was matched only by the tragedy of lives lost in a city under siege. As the battle raged on, the toll on Dublin's civilian population mounted. Families huddled in their homes, praying for safety, as bullets whistled through the air and explosions shook the foundations of their world. The Rising, which had begun with idealistic fervor, was now face to face with the harsh realities of urban warfare. The turning point came with the evacuation of the GPO. As flames engulfed the building that had become the symbol of the rebellion, the rebels were forced to abandon their headquarters. This moment marked the beginning of the end for the physical battle, as the overwhelming force brought to bear by the British military proved too much to withstand. As the smoke cleared over Dublin's ruined streets, a different kind of fire began to burn in the hearts of the Irish people. Within the cold stone walls of Kilmainham jail, a love story unfolded that would captivate a nation and become a symbol of defiance against British rule. Joseph Plunkett, one of the Rising's leaders, was set to marry his sweetheart, Grace Gifford, in a ceremony that would become etched in Irish history. On May 4, 1916, just hours before Plunkett was to face the firing squad, the couple exchanged vows in the prison chapel. Their union, born in the shadow of death, would inspire generations and become immortalized in song. The ballad, Grace, penned by Frank and Sean O'Meara, captures the poignant final moments of the couple's brief marriage, serving as a haunting reminder of the personal cost of revolution. But Plunkett's fate was not unique. In the days following the Rising's suppression, British authorities moved swiftly to crush the rebel spirit. Between May 3rd and May 12th, 15 leaders of the Easter Rising faced British justice. The executions began with Thomas Clarke, Thomas MacDonagh and Patrick Pearse on May 3rd, setting a grim tone for what was to come. Each day brought new names to the roll of the executed. Edward Daly, Michael O'Hanrahan, William Pearse, John McBride and others followed in quick succession. Eamon Cant, Con Colber, Sean Houston, Michael Mallin, Thomas Kent, Sean McDiarmada and James Connolly. The final rebel leader, Roger Casement, met his end on August 3, 1916, bringing the total to 16. As news of the executions spread, a wave of shock rippled through Ireland. The British authorities, in their zeal to quell the rebellion, cast a wide net. Approximately 3,000 individuals found themselves arrested in the aftermath, many with no direct involvement in the rising. This mass internment, intended to crush the revolutionary spirit, instead fanned its flames. Public opinion, initially ambivalent or even hostile to the rebels, began to shift dramatically. The continued executions, coupled with the scale of arrests, transformed the rebels from misguided troublemakers to martyrs in the eyes of many Irish citizens. The British response, meant to extinguish the spark of rebellion, instead ignited a blaze of nationalist fervour that would burn for years to come. Among those swept up in the arrests was a young man named Michael Collins. Imprisoned at Frongoch internment camp in Wales, Collins witnessed a transformation that would shape the future of Irish resistance. The harsh conditions at Frongoch, with its overcrowding and limited resources, became an unlikely crucible for revolutionary ideas. Within the prison's confines, discussions of guerrilla warfare strategies took root. Prisoners exchanged tactics, debated political philosophies, and began to envision a new approach to achieving Irish independence. The British authorities, in concentrating so many passionate minds in one place, had inadvertently created a revolutionary think tank. Collins, absorbing these lessons and discussions, would emerge from Frongoch with a new vision for Irish resistance. The seeds planted in those overcrowded prison barracks would grow into the guerrilla campaign that would define the upcoming War of Independence. From the ashes of the Easter Rising, a new era of Irish resistance was about to emerge. The lessons learned from the failed rebellion would soon transform into a revolutionary strategy that would shake the foundations of the British Empire. As the dust settled on Dublin's war-torn streets, one man stood ready to rewrite the rules of engagement: Michael Collins. Collins, who had fought valiantly at the General Post Office during the Rising, emerged from his internment at Frongoch with a radical new vision. He had witnessed firsthand the folly of capturing and holding fixed positions in Dublin, a strategy he deemed foolhardy and ultimately doomed to failure. These locations, difficult to escape from and nearly impossible to resupply, had become death traps for the rebels. Collins understood that a new approach was needed if Ireland was to have any hope of achieving independence. The British response to this new form of resistance inadvertently fueled the very fire it sought to extinguish. The heavy-handed tactics employed in the wake of the Easter Rising, mass arrests, executions, and the use of overwhelming force, had already begun to turn public opinion against British rule. Now, as the conflict escalated, each British reprisal served only to push more Irish citizens into the arms of the Republican movement. This cycle of escalation created a powder keg of tension across Ireland. The British found themselves embroiled in a conflict unlike any they had faced before, one where the enemy melted away into the population after each engagement. The traditional might of the empire, so effective in conventional warfare, proved ill-suited to combating this new breed of Irish revolutionary. As the War of Independence raged on, the seeds planted during those fateful days in 1916 continued to bear fruit. The ideals of Irish freedom, once confined to a passionate few, now burned in the hearts of many. The execution of the Rising's leaders had transformed them from rebels into martyrs, their sacrifice a rallying cry for a nation awakening to the possibility of true independence. As we draw the curtains on our exploration of the Easter Rising, we find its echoes resonating through the corridors of Irish history, shaping the nation's identity and political landscape. The sacrifices made in those fateful days of 1916 continue to cast long shadows over modern Ireland, their influence felt in every aspect of Irish life. Yet, A century later, the legacy of the Rising remains a subject of passionate debate and reflection. Thanks for watching our video on the 1916 Rising. Coming soon to Past Pixels AI History, the Irish War of Independence. Don't miss it. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more historical content. Slán Guofáil.
Marching through streets with hearts so bold, a story of sacrifice forever told. Rising against the chains, through the blood and the pain, for the green, for the flame. Island spirit they could not tame. Barricades built with hope and pride, dreams of a nation they could not hide. Bullets and fire, the cost so dear, yet their voices still ring for all to hear. Rising against the chains, through the blood and the pain, for the green, for the flame. Island spirit they could not tame. Oh, the tears of the mothers, the cries of the brave, a nation's rebirth from a fiery grave. And its voice, raw and true, sings their story for me and you. Rising against the chains, through the blood and the pain, for the green, for the flame.